Coming up next on Parent Connection, a conversation with Sandy Vogel from Arundel Middle School. Thank you for joining us for Parent Connection. Today, our guest is Sandy Vogel, a volunteer at Arundel Middle School. Thank you for joining us, Sandy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know that you're really an active volunteer. You were actually Volunteer of the Month. You were nominated by your school staff. So we want to congratulate you on that. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Montana and lived in South Dakota for 10 years. And then my husband and I moved out to Maryland, and he got a job at Northrop Grumman. And we've been here for almost 20 years now.
Wow. So you're a transplant here, but I guess now it feels like home.
Yes, yes, yes. I thought we would only be here 5 years and we'd move on somewhere else, and here we are, still here. So I don't think I'm going anywhere.
That's good. We want you here. Now tell us about how you got to volunteer at the middle school. What started that?
Well, I started volunteering in elementary school with both of our children. And when they went to middle school, you don't get a lot of information from the school or from your children, for that matter.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to know more about what was happening at the school. And so I simply emailed my children's teachers and asked them if there was anything I could do to help them. I had been a copy mom at the elementary level for both of my children's teachers, and so I asked them if they wanted me to make photocopies, and I got 2 takers in 6th grade for my son, and it just ballooned from there.
Well, I think you said an important thing. You don't get as much information from your children at middle school. They tend to they think, they're mature and they're pulling away from parents a little. So we don't get all the information, and you're not getting as many things sent home either, because they are trying to get them to be a little bit more mature. But as a parent, I think schools need parent volunteers at that middle school level, and lots of times parents feel like it's a time that they should step back. That's totally not accurate.
That's true. It's not accurate. The teachers there are overjoyed to have volunteers to help, and they want you in their classrooms, and they want you helping in whatever capacity you can. And with kids, it isn't always that they don't want you to know the information. I think sometimes they just have so much going on that they'll forget to tell you something that maybe you would want to know. And so then all of a sudden the day before, that's why you get, oh, by the way, I have something due, and that's why you hear those things always last minute.
And with middle schoolers, we know that there's so much going on with their brain development at that time too. Like you said, there are a lot of things going on, and it's just if they think it's important at the time to share with you, or if they even remember that they heard it.
Right.
That's a lot of it too.
Or some kids don't want their parent at the school because they, for whatever reason, just like they don't want you to chaperone things, or that's their independence showing through.
That's true. Now, you talked about the copying center. Tell us a little bit about that, because I know in your Volunteer of the Month award, that was one of the things they really talked about a lot. What actually is involved in that?
Well, because I was a copy mom in elementary, I knew the copier inside and out, and I enjoyed making photocopies. I know it's mundane work, but it was enjoyable to me, and it's helpful to the teachers. So I asked the teachers if they would want me to come in on a weekly basis to make photocopies for them. And I had, like I said, I had 2 takers to begin with, and then it ballooned from there to I started doing the entire science department in the middle school for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Wow.
And almost all the teachers utilized me being there. And they would just put directions on a sticky note or whatever, hand me the folder. I would make the copies, take it to their room, and then they had their copies finished for the whole week. So with that said, I thought, well, if the science department wanted copies done on a weekly basis, maybe there are other teachers who would want copies done
Right.
on a weekly basis. So I got together other volunteers, and we had volunteers for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they came in for several hours at the same time so that the
Right.
teachers would know. And I just set up a little file system so the teachers could put a folder with the originals in them for, like, if they wanted their copies done by Wednesday, they could put it in Monday or Tuesday. Then that person would come in, get those, make the copies, take them to the teachers, and so on and so forth. And but not only did we copy for the teachers, we also copied for the staff or the counseling department, back to school night items, all of those kind of things too. And so it worked very well. We didn't actually have anybody coming in on Fridays, but that was always something that we could implement later. But I honestly didn't have any problems finding moms who were able to come in for 3-4 hours at a time once a week. And it was the same, you know, every week you would go in at your time and make your copies, and the teachers knew they could count on us.
I think you really brought up an important part. One of the things when teachers give up control, because educators just naturally tend to be controlling type people, when we give up that control to someone else, all they need to know is to trust that it's going to get done. Because if they need the copies done for a specific lesson, and once they see that you're reliable and it's going to get done and they don't have to worry about that, that's a huge amount of time, teachers' time and staff time,
Yes.
that they can then work on lesson plans for
Or
their
anything else that needs
right,
to be
anything
done.
that needs to be done. It's going to be more instructionally based than
Right.
actually having to do the clerical type thing. So
Right.
I'm sure that is something that they really, really appreciate. And then
Yes.
if you expanded it to the whole school.
Yes. Well, and I did have a very reluctant 8th grade science teacher who did not want to let me take his copies, and he knows who he is. And he was finally told by one of his other 8th grade teachers just to give her the copies already, because they were spending hours, you know, at the copying machine trying to make all these copies. And I understand you want your copies done correctly, you want them done the way you want them done, and you want them done in a timely fashion. So trusting the people to do those copies can be difficult to
Right.
give that over, but once you know, he saw me every week, and I would ask him every week if he had copies, and he finally decided that I was worthy to do his copies.
Right, and I think that it's just that trust. Once they see that it's working, and everyone else is probably, you know, praising you at that time too, to him, saying how great it is, then when they know they can rely on you, then it's a little easier. But that is something that I think parents too, as we're trying to get volunteers, if they know, here's what you're going to be doing when you come in, and this is why it's so important, they want to do things that are going to help their children's teacher.
Right. And parents want detailed ideas of what needs to be done. They want to know specifically what they're going to be
Right.
doing, so they know exactly what to expect. Having a vague description of some volunteer opportunity is usually doesn't work very well, because they want to know how much time is going to be involved. What is the commitment level? Because if they work outside the home, they may have to take off work or come in on their day off or
Right.
or whatever. But there are plenty of things that can be done either in or outside of the school.
And as you said, you know, if teachers are having to do it either during planning or before or after school, that's when everyone else is trying to do it too. So by having volunteers during the day, that does free up not just their time, but then the machines too as well.
Right.
Because people know when you're going to be there and know that, okay, the machines are going to be used.
Right.
But I think that actually the teachers are the ones who told us how great it was. I mean, that's why they nominated you. And I think that if other schools wanted to do that, that would be a great thing to implement. Sometimes sometimes you have more volunteers than you need, and you're trying to think of what you would do. But that's something that is a service that I know all of our teachers appreciate.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about the time it takes to volunteer.
It depends upon what you want to volunteer for. Like the copy situation, I was there sometimes up to 5 hours, but I was doing the entire science department. The other volunteers did not have as much because they hadn't been working with the same people for years. And so I'm sure eventually it could be built up that we could use more volunteers, or even have somebody Monday morning and then someone else there in the afternoon, or depending upon how many teachers actually utilize it. But you know, there's many things that can be done. I was the volunteer coordinator for all of the activities also, events and such like that. And so there's things that come up all the time. When I would hear about the hearing and vision screening in the health room, I would send out an email to my volunteers asking if anyone had a few hours to come in to help with that, or maybe chaperones for a dance, or lunchroom monitors, you know, something like that. We also, year before last, we did parents that would come into the classroom and help the teachers themselves with supervision. Specifically, it was for the tech ed class because they're using equipment, and he had a very, very large class, and for safety reasons, he wanted more eyes.
That's
and
a good
so
point, right.
we actually had several parents who came in for tech ed classes on a weekly basis to help the tech ed teacher just make sure that everybody stayed safe.
That's a good point. And plus, it's something you might have volunteers who are really drawn to that, who have an interest in the things that they're doing in tech ed. So that might pull in a different group of volunteers as well.
And the music teacher also had a music room full of music that had never been gone through for probably 40 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
she was overwhelmed and asked for just a couple of people to come in and help her organize it. And I think we ended up with 4 or 5 people who were willing to come in and help her organize her music room, and she was just overjoyed.
But it's those kinds of things that if you have that active volunteer base, that you can come up with what really needs to be done. And you know, the music teacher may not have had those dedicated volunteers in the past that were there and they could count on. So that's important too. Now, at your school, do all of the volunteers go through the PTA, or how do you work that?
Well, volunteers can go through the PTA, and the PTA has plenty of their own activities that they put on that they need volunteers for. But quite honestly, you can volunteer separate from the PTA, either way. Our volunteer program ran through the PTA, and I gave the PTA the information for updates on what was happening in the volunteer world at Arundel Middle. But it doesn't necessarily have to go through the PTA. I recommend people are PTA members, but if people are not PTA members, that doesn't mean that they can't volunteer. And the time commitment just depends upon how much time you have to commit. There is really no time commitment that you have to have in order to be a volunteer. It's all about how much you want to volunteer.
Right, and we want our volunteers to, we would like all parents to be members of the parent group that's at the school, but it's not dependent on you volunteering, being a member.
Right.
Like you said, if you just want to volunteer and you want to give 2 hours or 1 hour a week or 1 hour every other week, then the school will come up with something that matches your interest.
Right. And so part of figuring out what activities there were, I sent out an email to all of the teachers telling them that as the volunteer coordinator, I could find them volunteers if they would give me pertinent information. And so I had quite a few teachers, like the tech ed teacher that time, who would send me information, and then I would relay it to my volunteers, and they would step up to the plate and help out.
And that's really important. I think of all the other classes, you know, you're thinking of art with all of the work that, you know, just all the things that have to be done to prepare for an art lesson. I'm sure there's lots of uses they could have, and you already talked about the music classes. But I think that's really important, to match your interest with what you're volunteering in, because if you're doing something that you're not interested in or
Right.
not enjoying, you won't tend to continue to do it. And we
Right.
want our volunteers to be happy and to keep coming back.
Right, exactly. But I have to say that everyone at the middle school is just overjoyed when somebody is willing to volunteer and to help out, because it gives them the time then to focus on bigger things, things that are pertinent to your child or to someone else's child, and helping them learn. And
Right.
if I can do a task that might take time, but it doesn't take a lot of brain power to do, that alleviates the teacher from having to do that, and they can focus on something that's more important.
Now, how long have you been volunteering?
Well, I started small when our daughter was a kindergartner, and as my children grew and both became students in elementary, then I volunteered more and more and more, and was volunteer coordinator on the elementary level, was involved in the PTA, and held several offices in the PTA, and that was just my life. I always told people that my husband paid me to volunteer, and then
There
he
you
didn't,
go.
and then he didn't have to.
But that's great. That's really wonderful. And as your children progress to high school, I'm sure the high school's going to want you, but you're going to have to backfill. That
Well,
middle school's
I
going to
did-
make sure you
Yes.
have a team in place.
Yes, I did volunteer at the high school level also, which again, sometimes it's hard to get information. However, both of the middle school and the high school where my children attend have been sending out weekly emails, and that definitely helps to keep you in the loop
Yes.
as far as what's going on. And of course, website pages, web pages, and that, you can keep yourself informed also. But there are plenty of things in the high school that they need volunteers for as well.
Well, you've mentioned you've been a long time volunteer, so you've done it since your children started school. Do you find that volunteering is fulfilling?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Even though I don't get paid to be a volunteer, because you don't, I found it very fulfilling. It didn't bother me that I wasn't getting paid, because I knew that I was helping, that I might not be helping my child particularly,
Right.
but I was helping all of the children, because the teachers then had more time to focus on the kids. And that was really my
Exactly.
goal, is to help the kids and the teachers. So yes, it's very fulfilling.
And we like to say all the time here that the students don't recognize paid and unpaid staff. They recognize caring adults in their life and in their school. So they don't look to you as whether you're getting paid or not. Your
Right.
children, they know that, and maybe a few of their friends, but everyone else in the building is just looking at you as another caring adult.
Correct. That's true. That's very true.
And I think it's good for them to see that you're giving back.
Yes. And I've noticed with my own children, because of my volunteering, they then started volunteering at their elementary school. And they had to kind of quit because of other things, but for over almost a year, they volunteered at their old elementary school and giving back to the school.
Besides the actual volunteer work that you do, what else do you find fulfilling about the actual volunteering?
I really enjoy having kind of an inside track on what's happening at the school. You get to meet the principal, the assistant principals. You get to see kind of the feel of the school, because every school kind of has its own personality.
Exactly.
And you get to know the teachers. You get to know their teaching methods, their philosophies. It can really help your children to know how to understand a teacher, and whether they're, you have kids always say teachers are mean, and you can then explain, no, they're not mean. They're just,
Right.
they're just organized, or they don't want chaos in their classroom, and so it really helps you to understand what's happening where your children are, and you may find out things that normal parents wouldn't always know, and good things.
Right. I think just getting that, like you said, the feel of the school and getting that confidence, because a lot of times at the middle school level, parents already have a little anxiety. Their children are leaving elementary school and they feel like that's such a protected area, and going to middle school and they expect more of them, and they're trying to get them to start thinking more like adults and acting like they're not holding their hand, I guess is what we want to say
Right.
as much.
Right.
So there's a lot of anxiety around that with parents. But if you're in that building, then you're seeing what's going on.
That's true. I was terrified when our oldest was going to go to middle school because nobody talks about the good stories. You only hear the
Right.
horror stories because that's what gets the attention. But both of my children had wonderful middle school experiences, and middle school can be very difficult because it is a time when kids are becoming more independent and they are spreading their wings, so to speak, and maybe aren't making the best choices or things like that. And so it can be a very difficult place for kids, but being in the school, I think definitely helps to understand what your kids go through, how crowded the hallways really are, all of those kind of things, what the teachers are like, how things operate.
And I remember when my children, the same thing, when they went to middle school, that anxiety and that just thinking, they're not ready, they're too small, they're they're not mature enough. But we had the exact same experience at different schools. They totally loved their middle school years. They loved the difference in going from class to class and feeling like they were more mature. And it was a great overall experience. All that anxiety was kind of like a lot of wasted time.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So I hear that you have done things for the staff even. You've opened your home up. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for 2 years in a row, I hosted a pool party for the teachers that I copied for, and they could just come and have something to eat and bring their families and swim and just relax and have a good time. And we did. We had a wonderful time both years. So
I think that shows that community,
Yes.
the schools being a community and parents
Yes.
feeling part of that community and having, feeling comfortable, inviting them there, and then teachers feeling comfortable enough to go
Right.
and enjoy that. It's a really nice thank you that you and your family did for them, and I know they
Yes,
appreciated
we
it.
enjoyed it very much.
So what would you say to parents who are listening to this and they haven't really volunteered before? Maybe their children are very young, or maybe their children are going to middle school and they never did the volunteer thing during the elementary school. What would you tell them the first thing they should do and how to start getting into volunteering?
I would say that you just have to take a step of faith and just try it, because you won't know if you like it unless you try it. Arundel Middle School has a volunteer form that you usually get at back to school night or various other places. Because there's so many students in elementary or in middle school and high school. Generally, you don't get flyers home like you did when they were in elementary school.
Right.
And because there's so many different teachers. And so usually at some function like back to school night, there will be a volunteer flyer, or it might even be attached to the PTA form. If they're two separate entities, you might have two separate flyers. Fill it out. Our flyer had a place to mark what they were interested in, whether they wanted to help with events, whether they wanted to help with teacher and staff, or whether they wanted to just provide food for hospitality events for the teachers, things like that. And you could just check it off and wait for somebody to send you an email about what the next event was and whether you'd be able to volunteer or not. And if you don't hear back from the volunteer coordinator right away, you can email your teachers individually, your child's
Right.
teachers individually, and just say that you would like to do something. Tell them when you're available, whether it's in school or out of school things,
Right,
and just
exactly.
see what is there. Sometimes teachers don't think about it until somebody asks to help.
That's true. And the other thing you've mentioned a couple times, I know you're the volunteer coordinator at that school, and we're always looking for parents to step forward and be the volunteer coordinator. Could you tell our audience a little bit about what the roles and responsibilities of the volunteer coordinator are?
I don't like to micromanage, and so I tried not to make it a lot of extra work, and so I basically kept an email database, and when events would come up or things came up that needed help, I would just simply click and paste my whole list of emails
Right.
into an email just telling them the specifics about the job. The more specifics you can give parents, the better they're able to determine whether it's something that they can do or not. And then I would always have a point of contact person in my email. So if it was, say, the tech ed teacher, I would
Right.
have that person's email saying, if you're able to help this teacher, please email them directly. Because they know their schedule better than I would know their schedule.
That's true.
And so just getting the word out to the volunteers, then they could email that person directly. And so it didn't really take that much time.
Do you calculate the hours at the end, or is that done electronically? How does that work?
The hours that each individual
volunteers.
Well, the schools all have Raptorware, which when you come into the school and they scan your driver's license, if they put you in as a volunteer, it logs all of your hours. And then you can also, if you're doing things at home, you can get the Raptorware for the home things, and you can input all of your time that you're doing things at home into the same system. And they actually combine, because all of my home hours also came out on my Raptorware hours from the school. And so those are all kept,
Right.
and you can run reports at the end of the year, and then you know exactly how many hours each school got, and each person how many they volunteered.
And that's really important. I don't think, lots of times volunteers don't necessarily always say that they're there to volunteer, or they don't, or they're thinking, I don't need to get a certificate. But the important part, and I try to really stress this because we oversee that area, is the volunteer hours that we capture for the whole system. When we write grants, large
Right.
system-wide grants, we have to give in-kind services.
Right.
And our in-kind services are our volunteer hours. So it's really important that we have an accurate count of how many volunteers we have and how many hours they give.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things we're always looking for, volunteer coordinators to help us do that. And we truly appreciate that you're doing that at your school.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we appreciate everything else that you're doing at Arundel Middle School, and I know they appreciate you as well. We're really happy that you could join us today and share some of those things with our audience.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
And thank you for joining us for Parent Connection. Until next time.
Hi, I'm Jody Rissy, the Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services and the host of Food for Thought. Today, I come to you with exciting news about school meals. School meals offer students a healthy school breakfast and lunch. This year, we will continue to meet and exceed federal and state nutrition standards for school meals, ensuring that all meals are well-balanced, provide students with the nutrition they need for academic success. Every day, students are offered unlimited choices of fruits and vegetables. Students are encouraged to select up to 2 cups of fresh produce each day from one of our unique salad bars in Anne Arundel County. You may also monitor your child's school meals account online at My Payments Plus. This is a convenient tool that Anne Arundel County Public Schools offers all parents to make managing school meal accounts a simple process for you, your child, and the school. To learn more about My Payments Plus, simply visit mypaymentsplus.com or call 877-237-0946. Registration is free and quick, so get started today. Each year, families have the ability to apply for free or reduced price meals. The application to apply is online. Parents, you may log on to applyformeals.aacps.org. The process is fast, easy, convenient, and it's accessible from any computer. Remember, if you received meal benefits last year, you must complete a new application each school year. If you have any questions regarding the application, please call 410-222-5900 and we will assist you. If you need assistance with the Spanish application, please contact the bilingual facilitator from your school. Thank you for this opportunity to provide you the valuable information pertaining to school meals. All students in Anne Arundel County have access to a nutritious breakfast and lunch on a daily basis. These meals fuel their brains and bodies for academic excellence. If you have any questions regarding the healthy school meals offered in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, please contact me directly at 410-222-5900. Thanks again, and continue to watch AACPS TV and tune into the next segment of Food for Thought.